Also, while we speak, there are counterterrorism raids going on throughout London, especially in East London. We have some footage from moments ago as British counterterrorism officials are conducting raids in that area and neighborhood and across London as they try to identify the network or web of Islamists who could have been responsible for this particular attack. Any more details on number of arrests or people involved, we will certainly bring it to you. In the meantime, let's bring in our counterterrorism panel. Former commander in the U.S. Army Special Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz, former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz, and former U.S. Navy commander and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Good morning to all of you. Fred, let me start with you. We heard also from Theresa May this morning talking about the need. There's too much tolerance of extremism in Britain, that we need to deny safe spaces from these radicals inside the country where this extremism is fomented. Did she hit the right tone? Are they doing the right things?
You know, it sounded like she hit the right tone, but the real problem here, something no one's talking about, is assimilation. There's an enormous problem in the UK with large populations of Muslim citizens who have not been assimilated into British society, and there's efforts by Muslim leaders not to let them assimilate, and the British government is going along with this, including by tolerating a parallel judicial system of Sharia law courts. If May is serious, she's going to focus on the assimilation problem.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, I have to go to you. The mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, himself a Muslim, spoke up as well, did not mention sort of cracking down on radicalism in the ranks in London. How concerned are you about his approach, and what more needs to be done?
Well, I'm very concerned, Pete, because he doesn't get a pass. He gets it. Clearly, as a Muslim, he understands Islamists, and in fact, before he became mayor, he was actually defending some of them as a lawyer. And now he had an opportunity to use the term jihadism, to talk about Islamism, and to talk about fighting this evangelical Islamism that was moving into the West. It's even beyond what Fred is appropriately talking about, which is assimilation. It is about their forward civilizational jihad to bring their ideas to the West. And it's time for us in the West to not only defend our ideas, but proactively advance the ideas of liberty and anti-Islamism, anti-theocracy within the mosques, within their communities and neighborhoods. And people like Mayor Khan need to lead that effort or become marginalized and become radioactive. And that's been the problem. The British government's been working with the wrong groups and working with the Islamist apologists rather than the reformers who would be anti-Islamist.
Colonel Waltz, both Fred and Dr. Jasser talk about what needs to be done in London. You made a point earlier on the program about how important our fight is against ISIS, against the caliphate in Iraq and Syria. How important is it that we crush that so that we can crush the ideology?
Well, look, assimilation, better law enforcement and surveillance, it is incredibly important. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Playing defense will only get us so far, and eventually these kind of attacks are going to get through. We need to go on offense and do a better job there, both with hard power in taking down these sanctuaries, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, but also with soft power to undermine the legitimacy of Islamic extremism, as Dr. Jasser was alluding to. Look, terrorism is not new, but it's a tactic. You know, if we remember back to the 70s and the 80s, we had discos getting bombed, the Olympics being attacked, airliners being blown up over Lockerbie, but why don't those groups exist anymore? The Shining Path in Peru, Baader Meinhof, the Red Brigades, because the ideology, the idea of communism has been eliminated. It's been shown for the joke that it was, and we need to do the same thing with Islamic extremism.
Fred, you know, Americans looking at this saying, you know, I look at the background here of 6th Avenue here in New York City. This type of thing could happen here. President Trump tweeting that we need to be vigilant, that we can't have political correctness. Are we doing enough? Is America taking the right approach against this threat?
Well, the threat is very serious. DHS Secretary Kelly said just in April that there are terrorist investigations in all 50 states which he linked to radical Islam. We have to have really press the American people. If they see something, say something. We have to fight political correctness so people are empowered to speak out when they see something suspicious. We know what happened in San Bernardino. We know what happened in Manchester when people saw something suspicious, but they were afraid to speak out because they did not want to be politically incorrect.
Yeah. Dr. Jasser, you've spent your career trying to get the word out about this particular threat. You know, these Islamists who kill innocents are cowards, but they see themselves as soldiers of Allah, dying as martyrs during the holy month of Ramadan. They will receive extra benefits in heaven. How do you discredit that ideology that's so powerful to a young kid who's seeking purpose, say, in London today?
Pete, we need to be aggressive. We can't just be anti-terror and tell them, oh, the suicide belt is bad. And this is the problem with starting counterterrorism centers in Riyadh. They might be against Al-Qaeda and ISIS, but they are Sharia supremacists. That's why we have to do this in the West. We have the tools. The way to counter that narrative is the way I was raised, is that I could practice my faith more freely and be more Muslim in a secular government, in a Christian country that's interfaith, that is not based in Sharia or theocracy, but rather freedom. So this battle against theocracy, Americans get. We just need to understand where Islam is in its history and to begin to enable Muslims to fight for Britain and for America rather than for the jihadists.
It's a great point. Colonel Waltz, people have described this as a global insurgency, which means you beat an insurgency with counterinsurgency. I was a counterinsurgency instructor in Afghanistan. We tried to talk about the human terrain and how you affect that. How do you conduct counterinsurgency in London, in Britain, against this type of threat?
Well, I think, again, it's both global and local. You know, I think President Trump's speech in Riyadh, putting the onus on various Muslim governments to begin starting that from the top down, but then also it has to come from within the Muslim community, as Dr. Jasser mentioned. You know, we have to realize that we are at war. It takes soft power and hard power. We need both our diplomats and our military, economic and informational, and to begin taking this on as a Western society, again, just like we took on communism as a global effort. And folks, it's going to take generations, I think, to truly discredit this ideology, and we need to be prepared for that.
Well, gentlemen, you know of which you speak. Thank you all for joining us as we continue to watch live programming on the right of London.